get it on with this brisket. 16-pound brisket. I'm going to take it out, and we're going to show you how to trim it. And we're going to take the mystery out of brisket. So often, whoa, that's heavy. Put that right there, like so. So often, people are so afraid. Well, Pete, you were afraid to do a brisket, weren't you?
You know, Steve, I'd never done one. I'd cooked a lot of stuff, but you know, briskets is, to me, everything I'd ever heard is a little sensitive to how you do it.
Intimidating.
It intimidated me.
And I guess the reason is it's because it's so big. Now, the one thing about a brisket, people say, "Oh, I'm afraid to do a brisket because I don't want to ruin a $100 piece of meat." They're not that expensive, okay? And that's, if you go to, we got this one at Walmart. This is a choice Walmart grade brisket. They're fine to cook. They taste great. This was 16 pounds. I think it was $61 and some change. That one you got
50 some dollars,
$52,
13 pounds.
Around $3.95, maybe $4.49 a pound. Not too expensive. Now, if you go try to find Wagyu and Prime, yeah, they're going to be a lot more, but you don't have to do that. The things that they sell at Walmart, at Food City, the choice briskets that are, in the $3.95, $4.95 range, they're fine to use. You can use them. It's not going to be that big a deal. So if you've been on the fence about it, get out there and get one, and we'll let you watch this video, and we'll get you started. We're going to go start to finish here this morning on the Allison's Barbecue Show with Steve and Pete. All right, we're going to talk about what we did. No, we'll talk about that later, Pete. When we get yours out, we'll talk about what we did. We're going to do how to prep a brisket first. The thing you want to do is that you want to get rid of all the hard fat. That won't render. The fluffy fat under it, like there's fluffy down there, that will render. And but the hard stuff won't render, so it'll always stay hard and yucky and turn, just turn to meat kind of wanky. So what we're going to do, we're going to come here on this big old, right here on the side is a huge fat cap, and on this particular brisket, it's really big. So we want to get rid of that thing, and you want to slice just between the fat cap, the big fat thing, and the meat. You don't want to get too far into the meat, so you can just go and kind of feel your way, and the more you do, the easier it'll be. But you can see how that just comes out. You can use it and see how it almost pulls right off. And see, just got a little bit of meat on that one. Didn't get any meat on that one, so we're good. We're going to take this little nodule off right there. And that leaves us with this thing. You can kind of whittle it down. But see, this part, that'll render, and that'll turn to good flavor, and that's what fat does. That's why the briskets are so good. That's why the briskets are so good. They've got so much fat in them. And that fat, you want one with a lot of fat, because that's where the flavor comes from. Of course, everybody knows the point is up here. That's the thick part of the brisket, and the flat is down here. That's the thin part of the brisket. Everybody knows that, so we don't have to go over that too much. Let's see here. Let's see. We're going to take some of this. There's a little bit of brown meat. Pete, which camera are you on so I can hold it up?
I'm on the same. I'm on the middle camera. It's still, you got a good shot right there, so you're
right there. See that little bit of brown that's on there? You want to take all that off of the brisket. That's kind of wanky, and that'll never taste good. While we're working on this side, I'm going to take this is mostly fat up here. I'm going to take that thing off right there, move it. Now, some people like to save the fat. You can boil it down, make tallow. You can try to separate the meat from what little bit of meat you got on there. You can use it in stew. You can use it any way you want to use it, okay? Here's a little bit of right there. But this little bit of fat, the little chunks like that, that'll render, and that'll just add flavor to the brisket. The fat that's on the flat, if you get a lot of it, like right here, you can go underneath it, and you can trim it down like so. Get right underneath it. You can expose the meat. You don't have to spend a lot of time doing this. That'll render. But if you get a real big part, like this big chunk right there, I'm going to try to get under that a little bit. Yeah. See, we got down on that. That's good. That's good. We can even go under this a little bit more and get that. Make sure you got a sharp knife. I know there's all kinds of fancy, nice, expensive knives. I've got them, but I'm going to tell you something, Pete. These little Tramatinas that you get at Sam's, these are some of the sharpest knives I've ever used. and they work great. They're cheap, and not disposable cheap, but they're pretty cheap. So don't think you got to have an expensive knife to make this work. I'm gonna get this right there, a little bit of that off there.
Got it looking good there, Steve. Coming along good.
Yeah, that's coming along good. Got a little bit of silver skin on there. If you want to get all the silver skin off, you can. It's really not gonna affect the taste of it. There's just nothing. If you can do a pork butt, you can do a brisket, and we're going to show you how to do that too in a minute. All right, we've got that looking good. That top part. See how nice that looks right there compared to what it did. Remember, it had that big fat cap here. That looks nice. And you can, like I say, you can work on this thing all you want. If you got all day to, putz around with it, you can get all this little stuff. But we got more important things to do. We got to eat brisket. Over here. Right there, that big fat thing right there. We're gonna go after that right there.
That's a good shot. That's gonna
be the next. It's gonna be a little hard to do it this way, but I think I can. That's a big old hard piece of fat. And I go into it like that, and I try to get it, and I'll go right down the bottom. See there, and it comes right off. See how easy that is. And what that does, that shows the point. That's the connecting fat that connects the muscle. The brisket's two muscles. This is the point. If you wanted to separate this, you would simply go right in here and come right through here and go all the way back around, and that would separate the point from the flat. But we're not going to do that. We're going to cook it whole. Here's a bunch of yucky stuff right there. We're going to get that right there. We're going to get that right there before we turn it over. Take that off. That looks good. That's good. That's good right here. Okay. Well, now we're going to come over here. And we're going to start working on this side, then we're going to start working down on it, okay? Let me turn it around so y'all can see. This is a big old nasty piece of fat right there. I'll get that off there right there too. Now, you'll hear a lot of people talk about the aerodynamics of a brisket. If you're using an offset brisket or an offset cooker, that might be something to consider, but most of us are using pellet grills and things that heat from the bottom, so the aerodynamics of a brisket aren't going to be that important. All right. And I don't really know how important they are on another kind of. You see this thing right here, that little wing, that's a fatty mess, so we're just going to come in here and we're going to take that off right there. That's just an old fatty mess right there. That's a going to grind up if you want to grind up to to make hamburgers or something like that. That's a real good one because the fat's already there. Now here on the bottom, oh, I forgot to mention one thing. Make sure you trim this thing when it's cold. Just before we went on the air today, we took it out of the refrigerator. It was really cold. A lot easier to trim when it's cold. If it's when it warms up, it's really hard to get a hold of the fat. And you'll want to. You can even some people even put it in the freezer a little bit and just don't freeze it. Don't trim when it's frozen, but firm it up just a little bit. All right, here's the bottom. Here's a big chunk of fat right here. Now we're looking at this brisket from the bottom. Okay, you got a good shot of that, Pete?
I got it.
All right, good deal.
This middle camera, Steve's just got everything so good the way.
Okay, right here. If you were to draw an imaginary line right there, that's the point. That's the flat. That's the part that when they cut them on YouTube, you see all the juices. That's the part that runs out. This is the lean. If you're in Texas, they'll say, "Do you want a fatty or lean?" The lean is the flat. The fatty is the point. Okay, that's the way they talk about it down there. We're going to take this big chunk of fat off thing right there. Look at that big old thing. That thing is huge. Look at that. No meat at all on there. So we want to get down to a little bit because there's so much fat in the point already. You don't need a lot of fat on it, okay? So you can really whittle this thing down on the point. You can get as much fat as you want to take off the bottom of the point. Take it off because there's so much fat in those tissues, and it will render. And that's why the point is the best part of the brisket. Man, it's so good. It's so good. See, I just slide the knife under there. And we just go down right like so. See, it just comes right up. just like so. If you're ever thinking about where do they get the burnt ends at, this is where you get the burnt ends. If I was going to do burnt ends, I would separate this after we cooked it a little bit, and I'd get the burnt ends from right there. But we're not going to do burnt ends. But I do want to get some of this. I want to get some of this fat off this point, because there's so much fat inside that point that you don't need all this on there. There's so much good fat inside there. And I mean,
and
it's
still plenty of fat on there when you're done
oh yeah, Pete. And you know, and then that fat inside the tissues, I'm sure you can see it. Let me see. You don't want to get too deep, but I don't know if can you see that on there on the camera, Pete? All the whiteness that's in there.
Yeah. Let me look at another shot right here, Steve, and see. Okay, there we go.
If you can see all that fat in there,
yeah,
man, that's what renders. That's what makes it.
There's a good shot right there. A little close up right here on it. So this is giving you a good view of what you're doing right now.
Now you know when you shake a brisket when it's cooked right, you know, it jiggles. That's why it jiggles, is this fat right there starts to render, and it acts like a big old spring or shock absorber, and it'll let that brisket get a little wobble to it. And I'll show you what we're talking about here. I'm going to leave this just like so. That's good. Now here's the flat. This is the end. You want to leave a little bit of fat on. Depending on much, this has got a great size flat. I don't know if you can see that. You kind of look at that.
Hold on a minute.
See how much you got a fat cap, and you got some. How's that, Pete?
You're good. Good.
You got a fat cap, and then you've got the meat right there. That's a good brisket right there. You got plenty of meat, and that's what you want. You don't want to just pay for all the fat. You got enough fat. If you're wondering how much we've taken off so far, look at that. We've probably taken off probably 1.5 pounds already. That's all that's come off here, and we're going to do some more too. So what I'm going to look for here is I want to cut this thing down just a little bit. I want to take some of this fat off the flat. Okay. Now we're going to cook. I cook mine fat side up. So you know, if you're saying, well, you should have left the fat on there, Steve, to protect the brisket. I don't need that. I cook mine. I cook all my briskets in a pan, and I cook them fat side up. So I've got the pan that protects the meat on the bottom, and I've got the fat that just renders, and it renders down into that brisket, and it is just a wonderful, wonderful taste. And folks, there's lots of ways to do it. There is no wrong way. There is no right way. There's just your favorite way to do it. Nobody's is better than the other, because all you're looking for is good food in the end. It doesn't matter how you do it. Let's see. Over here, what I want to show them over here. Here's some more of that. Pete, can you see that? Some more of that brownish, I call it, looks like almost dead meat. It just doesn't look very appetizing. We're going to come in here. We're going to take that off, all right? We're going to take that off right there. We're just going to come down the side and take that off. See, it's not much. There's not much. You didn't lose much meat right there. And there's this big cap right there. We're going to come right down here. We're going to take that off as well. We're going to get all that dead, nasty old stuff off there. Yeah, that looks good. I don't think it would kill you, but it just doesn't look very appealing. All right, now we've got about a 1/4 to even a 1/2 inch of fat on this flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to whittle it down a little bit, because you want to get to the fluffy part. This is the hard part that we were talking about. So we want to just get it down to maybe try to get it all off the flat. Just whittle it down just a little bit and get some of that. Just we want to expose the fluffy fat, because we know it's going to render. And again, we're cooking this thing fat side up, and this fat is just going to melt. I believe it just melts down on the meat and makes it so much better. And to be honest with you, cook one, it's hard to tell if it's fat side up or it's fat side down, because they're so good. They're so good. See, we're whittling it down a little bit. You can just pick it up and get on the sides. know guys that sell these in restaurants. I don't know if they trim them this much or not. But it'd be awful hard trimming 20-some briskets in a day, wouldn't it, Pete?
Yeah, it's time consuming, no doubt. But you know what? At the end of the day, for doing one for yourself like this, I think it makes all the difference in the world.
Oh, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. Oh, that's looking good. That thing is looking good. That fat is just the right amount of fat. Let's try to get this off there a little bit. That's a little bit of, we want to get a little bit of fluffy fat. We don't want hard fat, we want fluffy fat. You can trim it, clean it up, do what you want. All right, there you go. That's it. That's all you got to do. You see, you got most of the fat off the point because there's so much fat in the point meat that you don't need any on the outside. And here on the flat, you want to put a little bit more on there to give it more flavor. But this, I'm going to tell you, this brisket right here, I'll cook this one. I'll cook this one tonight overnight, and I'll eat this one tomorrow. That'll be Sunday. This will be a very tasty brisket too because of all that nice fluffy fat that we've got on there. And you cook it, and let's see. Right here, there's a little bit of that brown stuff on there. Let's get that off. Right there. Should have brought my sharpener in here. But we almost got it. We almost got it. Now, when you're cooking it, or when you're slicing it, when you're done, you want to make sure you cut against the grain. Your grain's running this way, okay? And when you cook it, it's hard to see that grain after it's cooked. So all you need to do is just take a little bit off that corner, and what that does, that tells me that this is the way the grain's running. So when I slice this tomorrow, I'll start over here. Now when we slice it, when we get up to about right here, right there, we're going to turn that point around and we're going to slice it from there because the grain turns. And this over here, right here, you see this like this little flange? That is going to be wonderful. That's going to be a great taste. If I was going to do burnt ends, I would come in, separate it right there, and I'd take that fantastic meat right there and turn it into burnt ends. But there it goes. Quite a difference, isn't it, Pete?
Yes.
From where we started.
Absolutely.
And if you're wondering how much meat, how much fat we got on there, we probably got 2.5 pounds, I'd say. There's the fat that came out. Like I said, you can put it in a cast iron pan. You can make tallow out of it, or you can run it. You can take the parts with fat and the meat on it, and you can run it through, make hamburger meat out of it.